Good morning and Shabbat Shalom and welcome once again. I'm Rabbi Ed Feinstein and this is Valley Beth Shalom live online Torah study for a Shabbos morning. Welcome my dear friend Rabbi Marc Gellman. Rabbi Hirsch, our colleague, is out in the world today doing a wedding with a family, and we wish her much simcha as she brings a couple together. Rabbi Gellman, good morning. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, it's good Shabbos, Eddie. Good to see you.
Good Shabbos. So this morning we opened the story of Vayetze. This is the story of Father Jacob as he grows into his adulthood. Remember, the last time he steals his brother's birthright, steals his brother's blessing. His brother swears to kill him as soon as he has the chance, so Jacob takes off. And the image that the Torah portion begins with is Jacob sleeping on a rock, on a stone. Now, when I was in Boy Scout camp, they taught us, you sleep on your knapsack, you sleep on a sweatshirt, you sleep on a towel. If you're lucky, you sleep on your girlfriend, but you never sleep on a rock. You sleep on a rock for only one reason, because you took nothing with you. Because the world is hard and cold beneath your feet, beneath your head, and there's nothing to protect you from the world. And that's the symbol. And he has a dream. And he has a dream of a stairway, a ladder up into heaven, angels coming up and down on this ladder, and God standing next to him and giving him an assurance that he will be protected. And then the story goes on. He makes it to Haran, to the east. He meets his cousin Rachel and falls instantly, madly in love. Works for his uncle Laban for 7 years to earn the hand of Rachel in marriage. And that night they switch the girls and he ends up with Leah, and then marries Rachel.
For another 7 years.
For another 7 years. And the family begins now with the 2 wives and the 2 ladies in waiting and 13 children. And it's at the end of this Torah portion that he grows up and he discovers who he is and is given the command to return to Canaan, return to the homeland, return to the homestead, clean up the mess with his brother and continue the drama of covenant. This whole Torah portion takes place outside of Canaan, outside of the realm of covenant, as we watch this man come into himself and become the man that he's meant to be. And it all begins with a dream. And in this dream, he sees this connection between heaven and earth, and he sees angels on this ladder. Mark, you've thought a lot about angels. Talk to us about angels, what this means.
Well, let's start with something simple and silly, but it's not simple or silly. And that is, we learn from this that angels' wings had no purpose, that they don't really use wings to fly, because what would they need the ladder for, right? They're going up and down on a ladder. If they flew with wings, they wouldn't need the ladder. So whatever it is, the early idea of angels isn't with halos and wings. And part of the problem of Jews and angels is that we have It's a Wonderful Life and Clarence Oddbody and the angel, and he's trying to get his wings and the bell and the whole thing. And Frank Capra just messed it all up for us. And he was born in Palermo, so, it's not like I blame him for not understanding Jewish ideas about angels, but the basic thing is Judaism believes in angels, okay? Now, it's essential that angels exist, just as it's essential that God exists, because if God exists in the modern world, we have to say it that way, I guess. If God exists, God's power is so overwhelming that it can't come in direct contact with us. It would be plugging your toaster into the high voltage wires that carry electricity into the valley there. It would fry your toaster. So God's power is so great, he would fry your toaster. And so there has to be a way of, like with electricity, transforming it down so that we can contact God. There are several scholars who believe, and in the Gnostic religion, Hans Jonas has done some work on this, classic work, and that the role of Jesus in Christianity and the role of angels is to act as an intermediary between the higher realms, which can't have any contact with the lower realms. So angels are the first thing we believe is that angels are intermediaries between God and us. The second thing we learn about angels is that there's a hierarchy of angels. There's two angels mentioned in the Torah, Michael and Gabriel, and it's even dangerous. And this is one of the reasons why Jews don't know about angels. The rabbis were concerned, deeply concerned actually, that Jews would worship angels. And so, for example, in the Yerushalmi, we read in Barachot 9:1 that if a man is in distress, let him not call on Michael or Gabriel, let him call directly on me, on the Holy One, and I will hearken to them. So there's two things in that. One is there's a danger with angels that the intermediaries could be reverenced in ways that could become idolatrous. The second, though, is the deeper thing for modern people who have problems with God, much less angels. And I want to address our students, our listeners, who are having trouble with this old idea of some supernatural being coexisting with them in the world. Here's the question. And this isn't really about angels. This is about your spiritual life, about your Jewish life. Do you believe that there is some force in the universe that cares about you? Or do you believe you're all alone here? That's the choice. That's a choice we have to make. And the religious life is open to anyone who's made the choice to believe. It's not a matter of knowing, but it's a matter of trusting, which is what belief is about. Trusting that there is a force in the world that cares about us, is perhaps directing us, not controlling us, but cares about us. And there's all sorts of references to that in rabbinic literature. In Pirkei Avot 4:11, we learn that we acquire two angels, one praising our good deeds and one calling out our sins. They also help our prayers to reach God. And after we die, they usher our soul into the Olam Haba, the world to come, after a period of debriefing in what I call soul school. Maimonides states in his Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah 2:7 that all angels fall under one of 10 ranks. Chayot HaKodesh, Ofanim, Eralim, Chamashim, Seraphim, Malachim, Elokim, Bnei Elokim, Kruvim, Ishim. And this ranks the degree of an angel's comprehension of God. So there's God, angels, who are the intermediaries between God and us. And in the angelic ranks, there's the executive angels who are just, they were never people, they aren't people, they're unique spiritual beings, they take care of God and us. Michael is, for example, in charge of the Jewish people. So he's got a tough job. Think our jobs are tough? Whew. Michael had the real tough job. He's in charge of everyone. So we got those guys. And then the interesting thing for the modern person is the lowest level of angel, but the most important in our life. And these are people. They're just people. They don't have wings. They don't have halos. They aren't part of Maimonides' angelology. They're people. But they are bearing a message from God for you in your life. And that's the interesting thing about angels. And we see it in the Torah. Joseph's looking for his brothers. He meets a man who's clearly an angel. In the fields, he says, Ma tevakesh, what are you looking for? That question, what are you looking for, is enough for a big Yontif sermon. What are you looking for? What are you really looking for? And he says, I'm looking for my brothers and Shechem and Dothan, and he connects them. and then the history continues. What's that in the Torah for? Why not just that he found his brothers in Dothan? So that guy's really a messenger. And then, of course, the men who visit Abraham tell him that Sarah's going to have a child. They're angels, but they're men. And then there's also the wrestling, which will start next week's parsha, between Jacob and the angel. And every kid knows, oh, Jacob wrestled with the angel at the Jabbok River, right? That's not true. The Torah doesn't say it. That's not what the Torah says. The Torah says, "Vayeyavek ish imo ad alot hashachar." He wrestled with a man until dawn was coming up. Not he wrestled with an angel, but with a man. Now, obviously, it was an angel. So what we learn from this is there's these very fine gradations in which people, first of all, angels who are not people, they don't eat, they don't sleep, they don't have sexual urges. They're different beings. Angels can appear as people, but they're really angels. But we also have people who have a message from God like an angel, but they're people. And so what I would ask people who are listening is to just think about the angels in your life. Because when I put it that way, people who don't believe in angels will say, yeah, I think I had someone like that, or several people. Someone who said, I think you could be a really great doctor. And I never thought I could be. And then all of a sudden, this guy or this woman says, I think you could do this. And it changes your life. Or they say, I'd like you to meet this woman named Nina, and bing, it's your wife. Or Betty, who was a friend of a woman I went to Israel with, says, I went to school with this girl. We only had 50 girls in our house.
So how do you, but is this an angel who was sent from some beyond?
Yes.
Is this someone who connects you to your destiny? How do you understand that?
Bingo, exactamento. That's what it is. Now, can I prove that? No.
Well, but do you mean this literally or metaphorically?
Yes, I mean it literally.
Because most of us would say that's metaphor. Would say, yes, I was introduced by this person, and that person was my angel because she or he connected me with the person I was on my b'sheret I was meant to be with. Yes. And you use it as a metaphor, but you're using it in a different way.
Well, what does it mean that it's a metaphor?
It's because I don't really believe this is the supernatural revelation. I believe this is a person who really cares for me, who knows me well enough and can see that I belong with this person, or I belonged in this profession, or I belong going in this path of life.
Okay, but why is that person saying it at that moment?
Because they love me and I love them, and that's what they do for me.
But you are open at that moment to receiving that knowledge.
All right, so that's a nice idea.
So in other words, my view about angels is there are no angels anywhere, unless you're open to angels. If you're open to angels, there's millions of them who tell you what you're good at, who tell you what this and this and this. And don't forget, there's a dark side to this, Eddie. There's the bad angels. There's Satan, the Makatreg, the accuser. There's demons. There's Judaism is full of all of, and Rashi has a whole list of them. And
again, what does that mean for modern people? For those of us who are, look, I would, in my magical thinking moments, I would love to believe that there are angels walking among us who are directing us in the place we should go. But I'm scientific and skeptical and reasonable enough to say that's not the world. I would prefer to use the word as a metaphor. I like your third definition, which is those people who come into our lives and direct us in the direction we're going. Now you're talking about bad angels. So tell me what that means again for a person like me, who has a really hard time with supernatural things.
Right. So bad angels are the testers. That's what Satan is called, the accuser. That is, these are the people who appear in your life with the forbidden fruit. These are the people in your life who seduce you into the bad path. And it's your choice to follow them and their advice into the bad ways, or to reject their advice and walk on the straight path of halacha and God's ways and the ways that God wants for us. Now, I'm not saying, this isn't, when you say metaphor, I'm with you on it, in that I don't believe when that person introduced me to Betty, or when Tommy said to me on the day I met him, and I said, look, you seem like a nice guy. I'm going to be going to Florida. I got a big job there. It's a no-brainer. And he said, you're not going to Florida. And I said, why not? He said, because I had a dream last night and God came to me and said, you're going to meet someone tomorrow whom I love. And I want you to tell this person, I'm not through with you here. So this happened in my life.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I opened my cell phone. We didn't have smartphones back in '87. And I called Miami and I said, I'm not coming to be a rabbi. I turned down the ultimate job of one of the top 5 synagogues in America. I turned it down because Tom Hartman said he had a dream.
It's not your destiny.
That God is not through with me here.
Right.
Now, could that have been just smoke and mirrors? Yeah, could have been. But I said, I'm not going to Florida and I'm going to go with you, Tom. What are we going to do? And he said, let's go to ABC. And the next week we were the God Squad and we were on Good Morning America and my life changed.
Right.
So now you explain that to me. You tell me that's a metaphor. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a real dream.
Okay, no, I understand.
Now, is it real? Is there another way to understand this? Sure there is. Could this all be fantasy? Yes, it could be.
Right.
But it isn't for me, and it isn't for Judaism, and it isn't the way I see the world.
Okay, so the question, I think that's fine, and I accept that. Okay, of course, had you gone to Miami and become a big rabbi in Miami, that would have been a nice story too, by the way. And you would have done, done
my retirement fund would be a lot fuller. I could tell you.
But all right. So here's the question for those who are watching us. And first of all, do you believe in angels? Have you ever met an angel? And whether you take angels in the way that Rabbi Gellman is expressing angels as messengers from beyond, whose job it is to direct us in the direction that our destiny is meant to take us.
Yeah.
Whether you take angels in the way that I've expressed, which is as a metaphor, to say that we meet people along the way of life, and they have this decisive effect upon us. They direct us in certain ways. And when we look back, it's always backwards. When you look back, you say, that person was the one who set me right. And the direction I went in my life was the right direction because of that person. And then I think it's a metaphorical meaning of the word. The question is, do you believe in these things? Do you believe that these things happen to us? Can you tell stories about these? I mean, I can tell you my stories too, but I think I gather them all under the category of angels as metaphor. I'm not really certain of the supernatural origin of these things as you are, but I appreciate it. I'm not.
Look, I understand, and I love you, and I appreciate your point of view. It's funny. I'm the one with the PhD in philosophy. I'm the one who's supposed to be the cynic and the rationalist.
And you're the reform rabbi.
I'm the reform rabbi.
Less,
and you separate wool and linen, and I can't even figure what.
Well, listen. I mean,
But the point of it is that there has to be a kind of a reckoning about whether we are alone or whether we are accompanied.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
And everyone can tie into that.
I appreciate that.
And that's because otherwise, what are we offering people in the religious life?
No, that's not the answer. Because otherwise,
you're alone.
Imagine myself as being alone in a cold, dark,
unfeeling,
meaningless universe.
The
And that
existentialist, right.
life in general, and my life is only a happy biochemical accident, is nothing that any one of us want to believe.
It's Camus. The meaning of life is that it ends.
Yeah, and none of us, or your teacher Richard Rubenstein, who bought onto this also.
Yes,
And none of us want to say that, because we all have a sense that if not our own lives, certainly the lives of those we love have somehow been put into the world for purposes beyond ourselves. That, I think, is a beautiful way to imagine this. I really believe in that. I mean, I really.
Well, you are that. Eddie, you have been an angel to thousands and thousands of people, really, in your counseling and your speaking and just your presence. You have been an angel. You've been an angel to me. I came all alone into LA, and you offered me friendship and a quarter for a hamburger.
No, I took you to lunch and a nice.
You did, absolutely.
Come on.
Couple of times. What was that, Eddie?
And I'm coming to Florida to collect, by the way.
You bet. You're good. I'll take you to Ben's.
I think this is a very important idea, and I want to go back for a moment, because this Torah portion begins with this. You have a young man,
yes,
who leaves home, and by every indication, it's the first time he's been away from home, and he's sleeping on a stone, and he's all alone in the world. He's run away from his parents because his brother promised to kill him. He's alienated himself from his father because he impersonated his brother and stole the blessing. His mother's turned him and twisted him and manipulated him.
Yep.
And sleeping out there in the middle of nowhere, the question one asks is, does anyone know that I exist? Does anyone care that I exist? And the dream is exactly, you've said it perfectly. The dream is exactly the answer to that question.
You're not alone.
Not only are you not alone, not only do we know you exist, but you have a role to play in an evolving drama of a great family, a great people, and humanity. I mean, who is this man in the end? He is the progenitor of our people. He is our namesake, right? He is going to be, if you want to play the game, one of the, if not the most influential human being who ever walked the planet.
Yeah.
Because of this people and what they've contributed to humanity, right? And then, then what's wonderful is then you see the drama that succeeds that one. And we can move beyond the angel question, because now you see, so the first thing that happens is he comes to the well, he meets his cousin, and he falls madly in love at first sight. So the young man is discovering himself, and the first thing he discovers, I think this is beautiful, actually. He discovers his power to love. I mean, for the first time in his life, he needs someone. And he recognizes in someone the one who will make him whole. He falls in love with Rachel. And then the second step is he meets his Uncle Laban. And Uncle Laban is the world king of manipulators. And that's the story. So the manipulator, Jacob, gets manipulated. And suddenly he discovers what happens when you play with people's feelings and commitments and needs. And he discovers, I think, in the course of this, what he did to his brother, and what he did to his father, and what he did to his mother, and what he's done in the world. And he discovers his own, talk about bad angels, the bad angels of his own nature. They're revealed to him in what Laban does to him.
And the bad angels of his nature are transformed in the wrestling match where he gets a new name.
Yes.
And his old name, the thief, the manipulator, Yaakov, Ekev, the one hanging onto the heel.
A heel, literally the heel. Right.
The heel. He's now Yisrael, one who struggles with God and people and prevails.
And prevails.
Now, yes. I wanted to make sure I put in one of my actual favorite Heschel story. And there's all these wonderful Heschel stories, Abraham Joshua Heschel. I don't think he was a great theologian, but he was a great storyteller, which to me is even more important. So he tells a story that he first heard the Akeda story with his father, and he's crying. And his father says, "Why are you crying?" And he says, "Because I'm worried that the angel who tells Father Abraham not to kill Isaac will be too late.
Too late, yeah.
Will be too late." And Heschel tells his son, "No, you don't understand. Angels are never too late. People people can be too late.
And I want to put in one more word. There's one more character in the story that we haven't mentioned. And she's a very interesting character, and that's Leah.
Yeah.
And in some ways, Leah is like the victim in this. She's the pawn. She's the unwanted, unloved, unnoticed daughter, another soul alone in the world and unnoticed. And she gets substituted for the daughter of passion. She gets substituted for Rachel. And he wakes up in the morning and he has no tenderness toward her. He rushes out to complain that he got the wrong girl. And then what happens is God says God noticed, the Torah says God noticed her, and she began to have children. And she began to have children. And you begin to see the growth of this character and her destiny. And she's the wife of loyalty, of commitment, of responsibility. And she's the one who's buried next to him, after all, in Machpelah. Rachel's buried on the road near Bethlehem, but she's the one buried next to him. It's as if each one of these characters confronts him. Use your angel theory. Each one of the characters confronts him with another aspect of his character. The love that he never knew he had within him, that's Rachel. The commitment, responsibility, and loyalty he never knew he had within him, that's Leah. And the bad angel of Lavan, who shows him what it means when you manipulate, what it means when you use people the way he is so used to doing. And slowly, it's the birth of a mensch. It's the birth of a human soul. And then comes the wrestling match with the man, the unnamed character on the other side of the Yavok River before he meets his brother. And that's the denouement of the story. That's when he really comes into himself.
I agree. That's beautiful. And there's two other women. First of all, there's another thing women and men should take from this, and that is Rachel Roahi. It says Roahi. She was a shepherd. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like she was sort of a shepherd, or she was, for a woman, she was like, no, she was a shepherd and she was a woman. That was a male occupation, and she was a shepherd. And I guess in the old days, we would say a shepherdess, but she was a shepherd. So that's one thing. The other is Abraham, his grandfather, had really messed up, and you know my vort on the Akedah is all about Abraham's vacillation at killing Hagar and Ishmael, right? Because Sarah was barren, so she said, take Hagar. And then all of a sudden there's a fight and he gets rid of Hagar. And God is with Hagar. But here, same deal. Rachel is barren, and so he says, take Bilhah, the maidservant. And
Bill, yes. Rachel, that right.
Right. Take Bilhah, and then there's Zilpah for the other. And
don't try this at home.
He is loyal. He's loyal to them. That's the thing. Yes. He doesn't send them out. She has the first child, and Reuben, and then Shimon. Who's the first one?
Reuven, Shimon.
Reuben. And then there's God, and there's
Asher. Those are the ones.
God and Asher, right?
And
so that's another sort of maturity, that he's willing to treat his concubines with the respect that they deserve as bearers of some of the tribes.
And the children become part of the family.
Part of the family. They aren't sent into the desert.
And the most wonderful thing about the whole story, and this again harkens back to your wonderful discussion about angels. The story begins with a journey and it ends with a journey. It begins with the journey. Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva. He's leaving home, and on the road he has this dream, and it's going to end as he's leaving Haran and coming back home. And the reason it begins and ends with the journey is because it's about the internal journey. He's not born Israel. He's not born Jacob. Life is a journey of discovery and growth and development and the unfolding of what's inside of him. And that's what makes this such a remarkable story. He's not born a tzaddik, right? And the idea is that nobody's born a tzaddik. It's about the unfolding of character, and all of us have within us, as Mark said, good and bad angels, these forces that are vying for our attention and our commitment. And that's what you see in this wonderful story.
Yeah.
That's what makes the story whole.
It's a choice. It's really a choice. Because if you make the choice about religion, about your faith, about Judaism, if you make it a choice, do you or don't you believe in an invisible, all-powerful God? I don't know. How does that affect my life one way or another? It doesn't. But if you say, do you believe that that invisible, all-powerful creator God, through a series of intermediaries, has found a way to reach you with a message that can change your life? And all you have to do is to be open to the purpose-driven life.
Yeah, well, the openness is a brilliant observation. We used to kibitz, my brothers and I used to kibitz. We used to read Dayenu at the Seder table, right? And there's one verse in Dayenu which says, Ilu hevianu lahar Sinai v'lo natan lanu et Torah. If God had brought us to Mount Sinai, but not given us the Torah, Dayenu. Yeah. And we used to kibitz, and so we used to joke about that and say, "Oh, that'd have been a great scene." You know,
exactly.
Like, we're here. What's supposed to happen? But I read a commentary.
I don't have your address. You don't have my phone number.
But there's a beautiful Hasidic commentary on this. I found this commentary when I was preparing a Haggadah, and it's exactly what you said, Mark. Evo hevienu lahar Sinai. If you had brought us to the moment that we were ready to listen, even if you hadn't given us the Torah, the fact that we had turned our hearts and we were ready to learn, we were ready to grow, we were ready to hear, that in itself is a moment of profound revelation.
Absolutely. And let's add to that, which is so strong, so brilliant, so good. Let's add to that why the Shema doesn't start Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Yeah.
Why does it say Shema Yisrael? Because when we're dealing with a mystery as profound as God, openness, the ability to be open to the spiritual dimension of life. Whether you see it yet or whether you've had an experience yet, doesn't matter. The question is, are you open to it? And this, because you can't be open to God directly. God is too powerful. And there's a wonderful poem by my favorite German poet, Rilke. And he wrote about the archangel Michael to emphasize about, you're messing with a power here you don't understand. Bigger than the Ghostbusters, folks. And this is what Rilke wrote. He said, if the archangel Michael, now perilous from behind the stars, took even one step down toward us, our own heart, beating higher and higher, would beat us to death. That's what power is, folks. That's who you're dealing with here. These angels protect us, guard us, and insulate us from a power that made the black holes and universes and galaxies beyond number, whose power is beyond anything we can comprehend. We need God to provide the unity principle of the universe, but we need angels so that when we have our dreams at Bethel, sleeping on a rock, feeling alone, feeling abandoned, we can dream that there is a ladder reaching between us and heaven. And that dream, Eddie, that dream is enough.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop. It's been a beautiful conversation this morning, Mark. Thanks so very much. And to everyone who's listening, thanks so very much. Of course, if you'll return with us this morning, the service is at 10 o'clock here at VBS. And during the course of the week, please be reminded that Morning Minyan, Sunday morning at 8:30 online, every other morning, 7:30 here at the synagogue and online, every evening at 5 o'clock tomorrow, Sunday at 5 o'clock online, every other evening here at the shul, 5 o'clock now that it gets dark earlier. And please join us Lunch and Learn this week at 12:30 on Wednesday. You can do it on Zoom, Facebook, or YouTube. We'll get the Facebook thing fixed up. I apologize for the problems we've had. And otherwise, we look forward to having you learn with us again next Shabbos. Take good care, Mark. Thanks so much.
Shabbat shalom, Eddie. I love you.